All right, Miss Mary, we've got Mr. Pharmacist Ben Fuchs queued up here, and we're getting ready to get started and switch gears and talk about mineral health nutrition.
Well, I hope the audience is queued up because Ben doesn't go light on anything. He's all energy.
I love to hear Pharmacist Ben. I'm really, really looking forward to this presentation. So go ahead.
And I knew these two would tie together nicely because all these nutrition questions that people were hitting Bob Perry with, Ben talks about these things clearly. So taking it from the soil to the human health, let's introduce Pharmacist Ben Fuchs. He is a radio show host out of Denver, Colorado, known for the Bright Side radio show. Ben, great to have you on board. And we are already...
I don't know if I can live up to that billing. I'm only a pharmacist, and how come I can't see Melissa? How come I can't
come on. All right, hang on a second.
Melissa's shy.
No, come on.
There we go. Hey, I'm running the screens here, so I've got like multiple screens. Good to see you.
I love the intelligent glasses.
Oh, thanks.
Very nice. Well, listen, I'm just a pharmacist, but I just love nutrition. That's kind of a passion of mine. And minerals are not only very fascinating, but they're really confusing. For example, do you know that there's the body doesn't really use minerals, with the exception of the skeletal system and the teeth. There's really not minerals in the body, and this creates a lot of confusion. Does that sound weird? I see Mary looking kind of strange at me. Like, what the heck is this?
Not at all.
Right? I mean, but when we hear the word minerals, there's no chapter in the handbook of nutrition. There's no section of nutrition or a category of nutrition that's more confusing than minerals, right? Everybody, even nutritionists are confused about minerals. And the reason is because the body doesn't really use minerals. It uses elements. And we don't make a distinction between, can you see that? I don't know if you can see that. Between elements, these are elements. This is the periodic table, this is the dictionary of life, right? There's no life occurs without some combination of this. What we call minerals are really combinations of elements. Elements are almost synonymous with atoms. An element is an atom. So we'll just use those terms synonymously. A mineral is a clump of atoms, just all clumped together. But I can't really use that. What the body can use is elements. And what makes this chapter in the Handbook of Nutrition so confusing is that there are different ways these atoms show up on planet Earth. One way they show up, for example, is two single atoms stuck together in what's called an ionic bond. We also know those as salts. By the way, who's on here so I know how to talk? I can't talk. Are there any chemists or is it all lay people or nutritionists?
We've got a couple nutritionists, but mostly lay people, I believe, and soil people.
I'll try to keep it as simple as I can. Minerals are clumps of elements. The body only uses elements. The body can't get nutrition from minerals, really. The body has to get nutrition from atoms that are loosely connected to each other or somehow connected to each other electronically in a fashion that allows them to be broken down and utilized by the body. This is what makes plant-derived minerals different from other minerals. It's what makes fulvic, I don't know if you guys got a chance to talk about fulvic minerals or humic minerals, different from minerals. Fulvic minerals, humic minerals, plant-derived minerals, colloidal minerals. There's various terms for these things. They're all slightly different. But essentially, they are the end result of rocks that have been digested by bacteria that are called lithotropes, which is a really fascinating word. I'm sure you've heard that term, lithotrope. Lithotropes means stone eaters. And these lithotropic microbes that live on the surface of the earth have this ability that nobody knows how they do this. Did you guys talk about this already? Have you guys already discussed this? No, okay. So these lithotropic microbes, stone eaters, eat the minerals and they somehow magically separate out all the elements that are clumped together in the mineral. They separate out all of these elements so that they're no longer clumped together, but they're single elements that are strung together electrically. They call them electrolytes, or technically they call them polyelectrolytes because they're long chains of electrolytes, and they have extremely fascinating and important properties that makes them very health relevant, not just for humans, but also for plants. these long strings of polyelectrolytes that are basically atoms of carbon and hydrogen and oxygen and nitrogen and sulfur and phosphorus that have been pulled out of the rocks and strung together like beads on a necklace. What happened to Mary? Mary just disappeared. Like beads on a necklace have a lot of interesting properties. For one thing, they're electrical. They spread their electrical charges very effectively. But most importantly, these long strings of electrolytes have an ability to interact with water. And that makes them super important. When something interacts with water, it becomes alive. So if you had, for example, hydrochloric acid or sulfuric acid, a super powerful acid, I sprinkled it in powder on my table, I could touch it, I could roll around in it, it wouldn't affect me. But if I put a drop of water in there, all of a sudden that sulfuric acid would react with the water and create this incredibly energetic compound. Water activates substances. If you take a mineral, what we call a mineral from the earth is basically a big mineral, it's a big rock. If you take the minerals from the earth and put them in water, there's no interaction. They don't have any activity. But when they're strung together in a long chain of elements, if those clumped together elements of the mineral are now strung together in a long chain of elements, all of a sudden they become alive, in essence. Now they become active and they have remarkable properties, incredibly important properties. They're so important that all of life comes from these long strings of polyelectrolytes. All the vitamins, all the proteins, all the amino acids, all the phytonutrients, all the things we call nutrients other than minerals arise from these long chains of polyelectrolytes. This makes them phenomenally important. It's funny because in the Bible, they tell us this. They say life came from the dirt, right? This is what it's about. Life came from earth. In fact, today they have something called I don't know if you heard of this, Mary, the clay theory of evolution, where they believe that life actually began in clays. Clays are these elements that are hydrated. Technically, a clay are these long chains of elements that have interacted with water and created a gel-like substance. And it's now thought that life itself began in these clays because these long chains of electrolytes that interact with water and form these various kind of clay-like substances are not only alive, but they're also magnetic. They have electromagnetic properties that allows them to attract things. They attract other elements. They attract amino acids. They attract fatty acids. They attract vitamins. They form these entire living complexes that are so full of life that it's actually believed that this is where life began. But where they become important for us, where they become important for health, is first of all, the magnetic properties that these long chains of electrical energy, almost think of it like a wire, these long wires, these long polyelectrolytes, the electromagnetic properties that they have that allow them to attract nutrients become very valuable to plants and to plant cells, because these systems act like multiple nutrient food sources for plants. The magnetic property that attracts vitamins and all these other amino acids and fatty acids and all these nutritional compounds creates nutritional complexes that, because of their electromagnetic properties, have an ability to enter into the root system of plants. And even more importantly, these magnetic nutrition, can you picture this in your head? These magnetic nutritional complexes that are made up of long strings of elements with vitamins and amino acids, etc. They go into plants, they go into the root system of the plants, they go into the plants, and this is so cool, you guys, they open up what are called voltage gates on cells, plant cells. Plant cells literally have garage doors. And these complexes, these electrolyte complexes that arose from the lithotropes that are now filled with vitamins and proteins and amino acids, etc., open up the garage door like a garage door opener, and they dump their nutrients inside. They actually act like a delivery system for plant cells, a nutrient delivery system for plant cells. And this is how plants get fed. And then the nutrients go into the plant. It's pretty cool, right? The nutrients go into the plant. The plant cell does all its business. It makes the chlorophyll, and it does all the things it does, the various proteins. And keep in mind now, when we talk about the importance of eating vegetation and all the phytonutrients and the phytosterols and the phytocannabinoids and all these phytonutrients that we're supposed to be eating, they are produced by the plant cell in response or as a function of all these nutrients that are entering into the system. This is what it means that life came from all of these elements, because all of these nutrients that we consider to be essential for life, vitamins, amino acids, fatty acids, etc., arise from the work that the plant cell is doing as a function of the nutrients that it's getting. So the plant cell does its business for the life of the plant. The plant then dies and then leaves behind its organic matter plus these I call them magical minerals. And it leaves it behind in the soil. And over the course of millions and millions of years, billions of years even, you've got these pools, or not pools, but mines of nutrients that have been left behind by the plants. And you can scoop them up and you can put them in water. You can scoop up the stuff and put it in water, and it dissolves in water because it has been magically transformed first by the lycotrophs, then by the plant cell itself, by the plant itself. And that at the end of the day, now you have formerly alive minerals that only need to be hydrated to come back to life. And that's why plant-derived minerals, fulvic minerals, humic minerals, all of these kinds of mineral complexes are not only important for humans, but they're also important for plants and they're important for soils. That's what I heard the gentleman talking about before. So that's kind of an interesting little thing about minerals that I want to get out of the way, is that it's not the minerals that we need, it's the elements that we need. And the elements come in different forms, and this is what accounts for the vast confusion that we have about minerals and about nutritional minerals, we'll say, what are called nutritional minerals, which are really nutritional elements. You want to look for elements that are combined in the right fashion for maximum nutritional benefit, either starting off as long strings of atoms, of polyelectrolytes, and then after they've been reacted or they've interacted with the plant, colloidal minerals. Colloidal minerals differ from these long strings in the sense that they have interacted now and they've been bonded with various protein substances that the plant has produced. So they're a little bit higher on the chain of complexity, the colloidal minerals, than the electrolytes, which are technically ions because they dissolve in water and they break apart. So sometimes you'll hear the term ionic minerals. Those are a little bit more fundamental. And in fact, the body has to break the colloidal minerals down to form elements and ions for it to get absorbed through the intestine. So they're already a little bit more complex, these plant-derived colloidal minerals. Now, interestingly, the body contains all of the minerals. These days, we believe it contains all of the elements in the periodic table. They used to tell you there's only about 60 or so in the human body, but as our ability to detect things by the trillionth parts or quadrillion parts becomes more and more sophisticated, now we know there's lead in the normal. That lead is a part of the body, arsenic is a part of the body, mercury is a part of the body, fluoride is a part of the body. There are various things that we didn't consider to be essential before or necessary. We're now starting to find that things like nickel and arsenic actually play a role in biochemistry. And it's really based on our ability to detect things. Personally, it doesn't make sense to me that not all of these are ultimately going to be found as part of the body as our ability to detect things becomes more and more sophisticated, because we come from the dirt, we come from the elements, and this is where all the elements arise from. So the body is made up of, I believe, probably we'll find out all the elements. They say the conventional wisdom is about 60 of the elements, but 4 of them make up 96% of the body, and 6 of them make up 99% of the body. So 99% of us is made up of 6 elements. That leaves, depending on how many you believe is in the body, 54 to 80 or so other elements that are found in the body, and they're all in at 1% or less. And some of these elements that are in 1% or less are said to be macro elements. They call them macro minerals, but really they're macro elements, and they form maybe another 0.8%. So 0.2% of the body is made up of the vast majority of elements on the periodic table. The most important or the most abundant elements in the body: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. And you never hear anybody talking about these as nutritional sources. Nobody ever says, we got to make sure you're getting your carbon, or You got to make sure you're getting your oxygen or your nitrogen. You know, although nitrogen is very interesting, and they all have interesting characteristics to play. You know, most of our air is nitrogen. Most of what we call air is made up of nitrogen. Nitrogen is really responsible in many ways for life. Nitrogen is the element that, the explosive element. You know, if you guys may have heard of something called glycerin, right? Glycerin is like a moisturizer, right? It's like in the cosmetic business, we call it a humectant. It attracts water, right? It's very benign. You could drink it. It's a sweetener. It's part of cough syrup. But if you add nitrogen to that glycerin, you could explode a mountain. In fact, they did explode mountains with nitroglycerin. Many years ago, that's what they used to explode mountains, to make highways. They used nitroglycerin. You ever see the pictures of the movies where the guy would carry the little vial of nitroglycerin very carefully, right? That's just ordinary glycerin with nitrogen. There's another nail polish remover. It's benign, you know, but if you add nitrogen to it, nail polish remover, one of the key ingredients in nail polish remover is called toluene. But if you add nitrogen to toluene, right, what do you get? TNT, trinitrotoluene, dynamite. Nitrogen explodes things. But nature has figured out a way to do something very interesting with nitrogen. Nature has figured out a way to take the air, which is about 78% or 78 or so percent nitrogen, and nature has figured out a way to take that nitrogen out of the air and incorporate it into chemistry and utilize the explosive nature of nitrogen to make life. And all farmers know about the importance of nitrogen for life. But nitrogen isn't just important. Nitrogen is important for life because it helps the bacteria, these so-called nitrogen-fixing bacteria that live at the bottom of the soil, or at the bottom underneath the plant on the soil at the root. These nitrogen-fixing bacteria have an ability to pull nitrogen out of the air, store the nitrogen, and create chemical bonds with the nitrogen that allows the plant to utilize that explosive energy. But it's not just the microbes in the soil that find nitrogen important and valuable for life. It's also the bacteria in our guts and the bacteria in our intestine. And nitrogen is extremely important for the health of our bacteria. Our probiotic bacteria, as much as it's important for the health of nitrogen-fixing bacteria. And that makes nitrogen in foods one of the most important and underappreciated elements. You never hear people saying, we got to get our nitrogen. But nitrogen is so important, is for not only for the body, for the biochemistry of the probiotics, it's also important for the energy of the macro structure. Nitrogen is why Popeye didn't eat hamburgers to get strong. What did he eat? Spinach. You ever wonder why he ate spinach? Spinach is one of nature's richest sources of nitrogen. And all green leafy vegetables are rich sources of nitrogen. And that's why it's important for us to enjoy nitrogen, because nitrogen gives our muscles power. In fact, nitrogen is what makes a protein a protein. A protein is just a sugar. A protein is just a fat with nitrogen. Nitrogen turns protein and fat into something that becomes the very essence of life, the very essence of movement, the very essence of dynamism, the very essence of potency. And so when you don't always hear people say, I got to get my nitrogen. You'd be smart to make sure you were eating lots of nitrogen. And interestingly, the form that nitrogen takes inside spinach and kale and green leafy vegetables is in a form that's bonded with oxygen. Nitrogen and oxygen go together. Nitrogen and oxygen form perfect pairs based on their positions on the periodic table. They marry each other very well, and they form something called nitrates, or depending on how many oxygens you have, nitrites. And these nitrates and nitrites have gotten a really bad reputation. And it's unfortunate they have, and they've gotten a bad reputation because they're used artificially, because they're so powerful. Nitrogen's so powerful and explosive, it kills things. And if you use nitrogen in enough quantities in the form of nitrates and nitrites, you can kill bacteria, which makes it a wonderful preservative. And so nitrates and nitrites used out of balance in nature, used in high quantities, kill things. And so nitrates and nitrites have gotten a bad reputation, but it turns out we need nitrates and we need nitrites. And we want to make sure we're eating lots of nitrates and nitrites in spinach. And guess what nature's I think spinach is my favorite source, but there's another source that you hear about a lot now. You guys hear me on Coast to Coast yesterday? I was on Coast to Coast yesterday, and they always have a commercial on Coast to Coast for something called Super Beets. Right? What is it about super beets all of a sudden? Beets. Who knew that beets were such a powerful food? Well, beets are loaded with nitrogen. But it's not just beets. Some guy got the idea to use beets and sell a product, but all vegetation, healthy vegetation, is going to have nitrogen, and you want to make sure that you're eating lots of nitrogen in the form of nitrates and nitrites. They will give you energy. They will give you strength. They will help with digestive health by providing a source of energy for probiotic bacteria, even though it's something you don't hear a lot about. So the second thing I was going to tell you about the chinops is, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. It's CHON, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen is oxygen. Oxygen is really important, and even though you don't have to eat, you're not going to get oxygen necessarily from your foods. Breathing is unbelievably important. You guys probably heard about the pH diet, or I think it's called the pH diet. But people are all interested in alkaline diets and making sure they're eating alkaline. That's not how we get alkaline. How do we get alkaline? We're supposed to get alkaline with oxygen. Oxygen has an alkalinizing effect. It raises the pH of the blood. This is how we're supposed to be. Our blood is supposed to maintain its alkalinity, is with oxygen. And when the blood has the correct pH, which is 7.38, not 7.37 and not 7.39, that's strictly held at 7.38, we feel good. We feel at peace. We feel content. When the body has low levels of oxygen, our pH drops, we become more acidic, and this is associated with sickness and disease. Now, most of the acid in the blood is a manifestation of toxicity, but with enough oxygen, you can raise the pH of the blood, and slow, deep breathing is one of the best strategies for getting oxygenated. In fact, slow, deep breathing is probably even more important than nutrition, all right? Because you can go a month without food, right? But you can't go 3 minutes or 4 minutes without oxygen. And so we don't think about oxygen as being, when we talk about minerals or elements, as I like to call them, we don't think about oxygen, but it's extremely, extremely important. All right. So carbon, fortunately, we live on a carbon planet, so you don't have to worry too much about carbon. But there's I should tell you, let me just quick digression, and I don't want to get too chemistry here. But this thing is so freaking cool, you guys. I mean, if you want to just enjoy the power of chemistry and power of nutrition, just get friendly with the periodic table. Don't be intimidated by it. But every column is really important. And things that are underneath each other have similar characteristics, right? So if you see the periodic table, you'll see it's got obviously columns this way and horizontal columns and vertical columns. The vertical columns are all similar to each other. So you can tell a lot about a characteristic by the column it's in. It turns out right underneath carbon is another element that is really important. And even though carbon you don't have to worry about too much, the element underneath carbon is super important and a hidden nutritional deficiency that I believe is responsible for a lot of health challenges. Anybody know what that is? Without looking? Do you know, Mary?
You're embarrassing me. I want to say
sorry.
silicone.
Pick on you.
Silicone.
So no, it's super cool. It's silicon.
Silicon.
Silicon. Now, silicon is not silicone. Silicone is a synthetic manufactured product that comes from silicon. But the most abundant element on planet Earth is silicon in the form of silica or silicates, which is silica related connected to oxygen, which we call what? Sand. Sand, exactly right. Now, sand isn't going to get you much nutrition, or the other famous form of silica that comes from sand is glass. And glass is a fused form of silica. Under high heat, the silica and sand turns into glass. So between sand and glass, you have the two most common forms of silica, but you're not going to get very much nutrition out of it. You can't eat glass and you can't eat sand. However, plants, remember the microbes, the lithotropes, they have an ability to break the silica up and to release silicon. Not silicone, silicon. And silicon is the element underneath the carbon on the periodic table. And silicon has got amazing electrical properties. For one thing, what is the most common source of silicon on our planet that's changing the world and maybe changing evolution itself? Maybe the next species of being after humanity is going to be a silicon being. Why?
A computer chip.
Exactly. Exactly. It turns out that silicon has such a high, powerful electrical property, conductivity, that it has an ability to channel electrons along little silicon wires that we call computer chips. And some people actually believe that the next life form is going to be a silicon-based life form, like we're a carbon-based life form. But for the body, silicon plays some amazingly important roles. It is a precipitating agent around which hard elements connect with each other in a way that forms hardness. So wherever you have hardness, you have silicon acting as a precipitating agent, and that includes the bones and the teeth. And it actually includes parts of the connective tissue as well, cartilage and connective tissue. And they find that they do a lot of experiments with chicks and silicon. They find that chicks who are deprived of silicon lay eggs that are fragile, because silicon is responsible for making for allowing the calcium to create hardness in a shell. It does the same thing inside the body, and silicon is a missing link when it comes to women and men, but mostly women have problems with osteoporosis. It's a problem with wrinkles. It's a problem with weak bones, with fractures and bone breaks. It's a problem associated with aging. And silicon supplementation is one of the hidden silicon deficiencies is one of the hidden nutritional deficiencies in all of nutrition. So, but silicon's a little bit tricky because it's not really readily available from plants. The way to get silicon is in a hydrated form, that is liquid silica gel. And you can get liquid silica gel by itself. You can get it's called, technically, the form that absorbs the water most is called orthosilicic acid, and it's found in nutritional supplements. Or you can buy liquid silica gel, and it's a great supplement to take for anti-aging. It's a great supplement to take for skin, hair, and nails. It's a great supplement to take for osteoporosis, and it's a great supplement to take for healing post-surgery. And very underappreciated, liquid silica gel. Another really important one that's misunderstood is called iodine. Now, everybody knows about iodine for the thyroid, but as it turns out, iodine is way more important than for the thyroid. In fact, all of the glands of the body depend on iodine for healthy functioning, especially female reproductive glands, including the breasts. And iodine deficiency is associated with fibrocystic breast disease. It's associated with uterine problems and reproductive issues. It's associated with cancers of the breast. And iodine deficiency is a very common deficiency as well. The problem with iodine is the best source of it is going to be seafood. So if you live in the middle of the country, if you don't, or you're not getting a lot of seafood somehow, you're going to have a greater tendency towards iodine deficiency. Also, physicians in the medical model will diagnose iodine deficiency by the thyroid. In fact, it's thought by most clinicians that the thyroid is where iodine does its business, and goiter, which is an enlarged thyroid, is thought to be the main sign of iodine deficiency. As it turns out, there's many other signs of iodine deficiency, including adrenal problems, breast problems, female reproductive problems, prostate issues. All of the glands of the body depend on iodine. Now, remember I said how on the column, all the atoms that are underneath each other vertically have similarities. Well, iodine is on the second to last column, and like I said, all these atoms are going to have similarities. That's going to create issues when it comes to nutrition because they can interfere with each other. When the body doesn't have an atom on the top, it will substitute an atom on the bottom. The column that iodine lives in is called the halogen column. You may have heard of that term with halogen lights. Halogens, these atoms that are called halogens, have a really powerful, super powerful electroconductive nature, and they could be used to make super bright lights in cars. And so they make halogen lights out of these. But halogens have some really, really interesting and important health implications. Iodine is the four of them down. Right above iodine is something called bromine. bromine and iodine have a very important relationship in the sense that bromine will interfere with iodine. And the parts of the body that use iodine can substitute bromine for iodine, especially if there's lots of bromine around. And especially if there's lots of bromine and not enough iodine around. So bromine can interfere with iodine functioning in the thyroid. It can interfere with iodine functioning in the breast. It can interfere with iodine functioning in the adrenal glands. It can interfere with iodine functioning everywhere in the body, especially if you're not getting enough iodine, which most people are not. And brominosis is a serious health problem, even if not diagnosed. Brominosis can cause problems with mineralization of the skeletal system. Brominosis can cause problems with the thyroid. Brominosis can cause skin issues. Bromine is found in, believe it or not, in various foods, vegetable oils. Brominated vegetable oil is a form of vegetable oil that's can be added to soda pop to create certain characteristics to soda pop, because the bromine makes the vegetable oil water soluble. This is one of the things that minerals can do. They can make other substances more water soluble than they are, and that's what bromine does. So a lot of people are suffering from bromine excess in combination with iodine deficiency and don't even know it. And they think that they could be taking iodine, but they could be suffering from too much bromine from eating brominated flour, which is one of the main ways that we get bromine. And you'll see it right on the ingredient deck. It'll say brominated flour. Another important element that's on the halogen line is fluoride, or fluorine, as it is on the periodic table. Fluorine or fluoride has got some really serious health challenges associated with it, even though a little bit is very important. It's not considered to be essential, but it's considered important as a hardening element. Little bit is a hardening element. Best source of natural fluoride, by the way, any takers out there for the best source of natural fluoride? Green tea is the best place to get natural fluoride. But fluoride, as we ingest it in water, is definitely not nutritional and very toxic. And remember, it's on the halogen list, so it's very likely that it could be interfering with iodine functioning. Fluoride is a hardening element, and just the right amounts and found in natural sources. It has a hardening effect on the bones, but when taken too much, it creates a hardening effect on the entire body. In fact, one of the ways we age is we harden. One of the ways we die is we harden, like we turn to stone. That's what happens to us. Literally, we calcify, and one of fluorine's mechanisms of action is to encourage calcification. Calcium is a hardening element. So wherever you have hardening in the body, you've got calcium. Fluoride has an ability to attract calcium, and it creates, in a good way, it creates hard bones and hard teeth, but in a bad way, it amplifies or enhances calcification of tissues. Calcification of tissues interferes with chemistry and ultimately leads us to our demise, typically earlier than it needs to be. So fluoride is an aging element. And as far away as you can stay from fluoride, the better. Now, that doesn't include the effects on fluoride in the brain and the pineal gland. Fluoride is actually a dumbing agent, a domesticating agent. It was used as famously by the Nazis in concentration camps, but it's also a key element in the fluoxetine molecule. Fluoxetine is also known as Prozac. Fluoxetine, the fluoride is the flu is fluoride, and it's Prozac. It has a very powerful soporific or sleep-inducing or relaxing or domesticating effect on the brain. It also hardens the brain, particularly the pineal gland. And the pineal gland is a critically important gland for producing the major hormone of being awake, the major daytime hormone, which is serotonin, and the major nighttime hormone, melatonin. And if you get all esoteric, the pineal gland is also associated with spiritual experiences and connection to God and all kinds of other things. And fluoride has a particular affinity for the pineal gland because the pineal gland is so tiny and is so affected by calcium. And hardening of the pineal gland secondary to fluoride is a horrible consequence of fluoridated water. And keep in mind, it's not just fluoridated water. We all, we can drink distilled water, but fluoride is it's in your shower tap, it's in your soda pop, it's in your orange juice, it's in your produce that are watered with fluoridated water. It's everywhere. It's almost impossible to avoid. But if you remember the relationship of all of the elements here, you know that you can use iodine to help protect you against fluoride. Iodine will be taken up preferentially by the various glands of the body over fluoride, and conversely, under iodine deficiency, fluoride will be taken in more readily. So you want to make sure that you're getting enough iodine. Another important element, halogen element, is chloride. Chloride, of course, everybody knows it's associated with sodium to form sodium chloride. But chloride also plays a very important role in the production of hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid and chloride becomes important for the digestive system. And chloride is a key electrolyte in the bloodstream, so important that they'll actually put it in your, if you're sick and you go to the hospital, they'll stick it right in your blood. They'll stick it as an IV, as an electrolytic IV. Chloride and sodium colloquially are known as salt, but really that's a little bit misleading. In the same way the whole element and mineral idea was misleading, sodium chloride is really not salt, it's table salt. And that's a little bit different. Salt is a generic chemistry term for you chemistry people out there. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. But so, are you a chemist, Melissa? You keep smiling over there. Is Melissa chemist? No, you just know this stuff. Okay. All right. So sodium chloride is table salt, and it gets a bad rap because electrolytes suck up water. That's how they work. They interact with water, so they have an ability to suck up water. That's why we sprinkle sodium chloride on ice. And we sprinkle sodium chloride on snow in snowy cities and on steps, etc., because the sodium chloride sucks up the water from the snow and from the ice, and it results in a melting of the snow and the ice. So sucking up water is thought to be by clinicians a health issue, especially if you have high blood pressure, because sucking up moisture leads to higher blood volume. More blood volume increases the pressure on the circulatory vessels. So salt has gotten a bad rap. The problem is sodium chloride has gotten a bad rap. The problem is sodium and chloride, and really all of the electrolytes, are part of the way are involved in the body's response to stress. The body will use sodium and chloride to increase the blood volume when you're freaked out or when you're having a stress issue, which is why if you are under a lot of duress and you drink salt water, it will taste delicious to you. In fact, if you've ever put salt in water and experienced a tiny little bit of salt water, and you haven't had, and for most people, you're under a lot of duress, you're not taking care of your nutrition, the first couple sips of that salt water is going to taste super delicious to you. And then a couple sips later, less delicious, and 3 or 4 sips later, less and less. And ultimately, it's not going to taste good at all to you, and you'll know you've had enough salt. And this is really an ideal thing, ideal nutritional strategy for folks who are dealing with stress issues, who are dealing with, and that doesn't mean only psychological stress. It can mean physiological stress as well. But because sodium and chloride are just 2 of the electrolytes, what you really want to do is you want to look for a source of salt that contains all the electrolytes, and that's where Celtic sea salt comes in, or Himalayan salt, or various salts. Those are the 2 most famous ones. But there's other salts that are really elements. They call them salts, but they're really elements that have been dismantled, rocks that have been dismantled, minerals that have been dismantled by these lithotropes, and they've created these salts that are either have been deposited in the ocean, in the case of Celtic sea salt, or they're in mountains. There's also another salt kind string of elements, polyelectrical string of elements called shilajit. You guys ever hear of shilajit? It's found in India and the Himalayas. Shilajit is not as tasty as Himalayan salt, but it's still a wonderful nutritional supplement, and it's great for. I'm in the skincare business. It's great for as a topical skincare product. And by the way, a lot of these elements can play roles in topical skincare because the same way that they magnetically attract in vitamins and amino acids to feed the plant, they magnetically attract active ingredients from skincare products, and they can deliver them to the lower levels of the skin, and they can open up the voltage gates of skin cells the same way they open up the voltage gates of plant cells. And these folic minerals and salts and Shilajit make wonderful topical skincare products. That's a slight digression. I didn't want to go into that too much. All right, so I'm winding out of time, but I want to talk about a couple of other ones, a couple of other important and my favorite minerals. One is selenium, which is very, very underappreciated. Doc Wallach, is everybody longevity here, by the way? Are we all longevity? No. Okay.
No, about half.
So Doc,
no, but yeah.
This was one of Doc's great discoveries, was the importance of selenium. Selenium is a very, very important and also toxic mineral if it's taken in. It's one of those minerals that if you take too much, it can be toxic, but it's got extreme value for, number one, the heart. In fact, selenium deficiency can cause cardiomyopathy of the heart, and it's been very well documented, famously in the Qishan province in China. And in fact, there's something called Qishan disease, which is selenium deficiency disease. And I believe Dr. Wallach was somehow involved in studying that back in the 60s and 70s. And then selenium, very importantly and very underappreciatedly, helps balance out excess estrogen. It's got estrogen mitigating properties. And I'm not going to digress too much on estrogen, except to say that when estrogen is not processed by the body appropriately, toxic forms of estrogen can build up and wreak absolute havoc on the human body. These toxic forms of estrogen are technically called catechol estrogens. And while sometimes estrogen gets a bad rap, it's really the catechol estrogens that are the source of the problem. And catechol estrogens build up under certain nutritional deficiencies and digestive problems and constipation and other issues. And it's these catechol estrogens that are responsible for autoimmune disease, largely. That's why most autoimmune disease patients are women. Hypothyroidism, again, most hypothyroid patients are women. Depression, fibromyalgia, chronic pain issues. All of these are signs of excess catechol estrogens. Breast cancer, of course, reproductive cancers, in fact, growths and malignancies. Estrogen is a growth-inducing substance. Endometriosis, I don't know if you guys, you ladies probably know about endometriosis. It is horrific beyond description. When you have endometriosis, basically your connective tissue glues together. Your body glues together. Can you imagine this? Have you ever seen anybody suffering from endometriosis? It is beyond miserable. There's no words to describe it. And it's a classic sign of estrogen run amok. So there's lots of ways to deal with it. I'm not telling you that taking selenium is the only way to do it. Most important thing to do is have regular bowel movements and work on the digestive system. And almost everybody who's got an estrogen-related health issue is constipated. So working on helping the bowel, clearing out the bowels is the number one strategy for handling estrogen. But selenium can be invaluable. Selenium is also important for insulin. So for diabetics, for people who are having blood sugar problems. And speaking of diabetics and blood sugar problems, two other of my favorite minerals, and these are two other ones that Dr. Wallach is really big on, and it's chromium and vanadium, both of which are important. Vanadium is important for insulin, and chromium is part of what's called the glucose tolerance factor, which is a combination of chromium and a couple of vitamins, specifically vitamin B1. And this glucose tolerance factor helps the body handle sugar. It turns out that when you handle sugar, you also handle sugar more effectively. You also handle cholesterol more effectively. Turns out that when you handle sugar and cholesterol more effectively, you have better cardiovascular functioning and you reduce the risk of heart disease. So chromium is important not just for sugar metabolism, and the sweeties, for if you're using longevity, is not just important for sugar metabolism, it's also important for cardiovascular health, and it's also one of the best things you could do to lower your blood fats and lower your blood cholesterol. In fact, all of the signs of what's called metabolic syndrome are improved by chromium supplementation, and you don't need very much chromium. Chromium is super powerfully electromagnetic. All of these, speaking of the periodic table, we talked about vertical, but there's a certain area in the periodic table horizontally where you have super powerful electrical substances. This is where selenium lives. This is where chromium lives. This is where zinc lives. And I'm running out of time, but I would be remiss if I didn't tell you about the absolute most important, to me as a skincare professional, the absolute most important skin mineral, and that's zinc. Zinc and also zinc deficiencies are extremely common. Zinc and copper go together, so I'll talk about those two together. Zinc deficiencies can cause copper problems, zinc excess can cause copper deficiencies. Copper excess can cause zinc deficiencies. They go together. So zinc and copper, or zinc, I will say, is critical for skin health, critical for DNA, for the production, for genetics, critical for the immune system, critical for digestive health. It plays so many roles in the body that there's actually 200 different enzyme systems in the body that depend on zinc, and deficiencies are extremely common. Zinc is one of those minerals that's not only available or valuable internally, it's also valuable topically, and it can be used as a sunscreen or sunblock, I should say, and it can also be used to heal burns. In fact, it's a sunblock that heals burns, and if you're using a sunscreen, I don't know if you guys just read, JAMA came out, Journal of the American Medical Association came out with an article last week, actually, or maybe earlier this week, where they showed that even one application of a sunscreen will end up in your blood, even just one application. And sunscreens are horrible toxic substances that are so toxic and deadly that if you drank them, you would die. And putting them on your skin is not drinking them, but now they show that it goes into your blood. So who knows? Enough of it is absolutely not a good thing. But zinc is a natural sunblock. It disperses the sun, or the rays of the sun. It has a sun reflective property, and it's a sunblock that actually heals your skin. Zinc deficiency is almost, or zinc supplementation is almost a cure for acne. It's incredibly valuable, and zinc deficiency is very common. Zinc is used by the body to process sugar, so the more sugar you're eating, the more refined carbohydrates you're eating, the more likely you're going to be to suffer from a zinc deficiency, which I said is very common. Zinc, you want about 50 milligrams of zinc a day, and it does remarkable things for people who have acne. Not necessarily food allergy acne, but hormonal acne, because zinc plays a major role in the male and female reproductive system. In fact, zinc is a fertility mineral as much as it's important for, basically because its ability to work with the genetics. It's a fertility mineral, and it's important for making babies. It's also important for testosterone production. It's also important for estrogen. So zinc is a super vital mineral that you want to, it's so important you want to supplement with that one individually. That's one that you want to take individually. There's a few of them that are so important, like selenium and chromium, that you want to take individually. The thing about zinc is all minerals, all of these atoms on the periodic, I know I'm running out of time here, so I'm just going to wind down. All of these atoms on the periodic table do not exist by themselves. You'll never see an element existing by itself. They're too energetic. They have too much power associated with them. They're atoms. You never see atoms by themselves. They're always clumped together. In the case of the elements, they're always stuck together with something. So zinc, you can't buy just zinc. You have to buy zinc sulfate or zinc gluconate. I didn't get a chance to talk about sulfate. I really wanted to do that, but we could do that on another one. Sulfate is ridiculous. I might sneak something in about sulfate, but zinc sulfate or zinc gluconate, these are two very poor forms of zinc. You want to look for zinc picolinate. And when you take picolinate, that's the most gentle form and the most inexpensive form.
And can I just chime in and say chromium picolinate? Is that the
picolinate
as well?
Yeah, there's other forms. That's the main form is chromium picolinate. I think there's a couple other forms, but that's the main form, chromium picolinate. Picolinate is an interesting element, or it's an amino acid actually, that combines with minerals to do something called chelation. And this is one of the ways the body handles minerals. I didn't get a chance to tell you how the body handles minerals. When you eat a mineral, the body will actually chelate it, will actually stick something to it. And one of the things that sticks to it is picolinate. And that's what makes zinc picolinate. It's a natural, it's chelated the way the body chelates it. So it makes it much easier on the body. A lot of times, the problem with zinc is a lot of times people will buy the Walgreens zinc, the cheapo zinc, and that's zinc sulfate and that's gluconate, and they'll end up with an upset stomach. Almost universally, especially particularly if they take it on an empty stomach, they'll end up nauseous and they'll never take zinc again. Zinc picolinate doesn't cause that problem. Copper is zinc's partner in crime. They go together. Copper's role is one of copper's main roles. It's got a couple roles. It's involved in the detoxification system of the body, which zinc is also. But copper's most interesting role that I find the most interesting role is in connective tissue building, especially in collagen building. Collagen is the body's most abundant protein. It is maybe 10%, 15% of the body is made up of collagen. It's ridiculously valuable, and a case could be made that aging itself is a collagen deficiency issue. Because when we think of collagen, we may think about, having beautiful skin, but collagen makes your blood vessels strong. It creates the matrix that all of your organs are sitting in. It makes your bone, it's what gives your skeletal system strength. So building collagen is incredibly important for anti-aging. I personally believe that aging is a sign of scurvy. Scurvy is collagen deficiency disease. It's actually vitamin C deficiency disease, but because vitamin C is the key element in making collagen, so all of the symptoms of scurvy are aging. Aging is a mild form of scurvy. If you look at the list of all of the symptoms associated with scurvy, you'll see it's similar to aging. Weak bones, weak blood vessels, weak heart, wrinkles and skin problems, skin laxity issues. They're all signs. They're very similar. It's not as dramatic when you're aging as scurvy, but it's very similar in terms of symptomology. Copper helps build collagen. It's not as important as vitamin C, which is the rate limiting step, but copper is critical for the production of collagen. So that makes it very anti-aging. That makes it important for osteoporosis patients. That makes it important for people who are worried about wrinkles. In fact, we use it in the skincare business a lot, copper, and it makes it really important for healing post-surgery and pre and post-surgery. Loading up with collagen-building nutrients pre and post-surgery is an important, a really important health strategy. I got so much more I wanted to tell you about sulfur, hopefully, and then
I could listen to you talk for hours.
And magnesium. No, I will take a couple questions. And
there are 118 elements on the periodic table, and you've only covered what?
I know. Well,
15 of them.
I know. There's so many.
I'd like to jump in, and I know Melissa's got a bunch of questions from the audience that they're posting on Facebook as we go.
Are we on Facebook?
Yeah. So people are viewing
it
in a private
group.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'm wondering, there are so many deficiencies possible and so many deficiencies common, but what tests are you recommending that people use to assess what they're low in?
Let me tell you what the problem with tests. Okay, we assume the numbers when we take tests, we assume high and low, but we never ask, how do you know what high is and how do you know what low is? Who makes the reference ranges and what the hell are the reference ranges? You ever wonder this? So
I do.
Yeah, right. Low and high are based on reference ranges. Reference ranges are statistical algorithms. They're formulas. They take 20 people or 100 people, small amount, not a lot, 100, maybe 200 people, something like that. And they take blood tests and they notice certain symptomologies, and then they put it together in some kind of formula and, magical algorithm, and they come out with numbers. And then they base everything based on the numbers. It's not just minerals, it's everything. This is how diagnostics is done. Diagnostics is done by the number, not by the patient. Diagnostics is done by statistics, not by biochemistry. It's like if you go, this is one of the reasons why people will be sick and the doctor will say you're fine. Or they'll say, I'm fine, and the doctor will say you're sick. And people will get medicated based on the numbers. It's like if you go to a restaurant and you order a hamburger and you eat a bite of the hamburger and you go, ugh, and you call the waiter, that's the worst hamburger I ever said. The waiter says, what are you talking about? Look at the menu here. Best hamburger ever. Delicious. It says right here, delicious. It's like we ignore our own experience. And the medical model and the clinicians don't look at us as humans that have symptoms, and we go by diagnostics. So I don't really go by diagnostics because they're really not meaningful. Just because you says you're high in iron or low in potassium doesn't necessarily mean you're low in iron and high in potassium. You have to go by your symptoms. You have to go by how you feel. And that makes nutrition much more simple in a way than we make it, in the sense that you got to eat right and you got to take all of your nutrients. And it makes it more complex in the sense that you can't just take this nutrient or that nutrient. You can't take, if I have an autoimmune disease, I'm not going to take selenium and cure it. This is a mistake we have in the world of nutrition, is we practice this for that. Yes. I call it this for that. I got this problem, I take that supplement. Or I have that problem, I take this supplement or this nutrient. You have to look at nutrition holistically, and you have to look at the patient as a complex of symptoms. And it requires a more sophisticated clinician, and it requires us to participate in our own health by understanding what our symptoms mean. So,
what's your best recommendation for prioritizing or evaluating what's most important to the individual?
Even in terms of the minerals?
Yes, in terms of nutritional supplementation.
What are you saying? Which category of nutrients?
No, how do you advise the average person?
90 essential nutrients, baseline. Extra zinc, if depending on what they've got going on, symptomology. Acne, I always give somebody zinc. For female issues, and really for everybody, but I hate to break it down as simply, but for female issues, magnesium. For relaxing issues, magnesium has a relaxing effect on the body. So for the bowels, as a laxative. For cramps, for relaxing muscle cramps, for migraine headaches, for relaxing vasculature, for hypertension or atrial fibrillation or tachycardia, where the heart's going crazy, magnesium. Anything you want to relax. For hardening, calcium for hardening if you're dealing with osteoporosis. Red blood cells, energy, iron. If you're dealing with energy levels. Iron's a really tricky one, though. We got to really talk a little bit about it. Did you get to talk about iron with anybody? Because that's really
no, we haven't.
That's an important one. Energy, the electrolytes, aging, silicon, anti-aging, accelerated aging, we'll say silicon. And then blood sugar, of course, chromium and vanadium. So selenium is important for. I don't like isolating things that way. Sulfur, I didn't talk to you about sulfur, but that is a real hidden deficiency issue that we don't think about. And sulfur is really, I'd say everybody would benefit from sulfur because it's part of the chenops. It's chenops elements that make up most of our body, and there's so many important roles it plays. And its soil deficiencies for sulfur rival soil deficiencies for almost any other element. So a lot of us sulfur represents a source of hidden deficiency. It's real easy to supplement with MSM sulfur. That's the best source of sulfur. So I know I just danced around a whole bunch of stuff there. I didn't give you a straight answer, but really I don't like just doing it that way where
No, that's great. Anna asked, well, yeah, what do you recommend for determining mineral balance in the body? And then is a hair tissue analysis good? Is this something we should?
Hair's probably good, except for the problem is when you take a hair analysis, you're seeing what happened 6 months ago. So a hair analysis is good technically because it's your body and you're actually seeing what's in your body, but you're seeing, number one, what's being excreted, and number two, you're seeing what was excreted 6 months ago. Because by the time you do your hair analysis, you're seeing what the hair was down in your scalp. It was in your body 6 months earlier by the time you do your hair analysis, unless you get under the scalp. So a hair analysis is not great. There's really no great ways to do it. What you can see, however, is excess amounts of lead, for example, or excess amounts of mercury, for example. So you can see some of the toxic ones, and that could give you some valuable information. You have high amounts of those. Also, I should tell you that high amounts of toxic minerals are best handled by something called, which we talked about a little bit, called chelation and chelation therapy. And also, I should tell you, I mean, I know I'm running way over here, and I'm going to wind up. Calcium is very, very misunderstood. And the main reason why we have calcium problems, including calcium stones and calcification, is not because of too much calcium. It's because of the body's inability to handle, the cell's inability to handle calcium effectively. So calcium is in the bone. We all know that in the bones, and 99% of it is in the skeletal system and the teeth. But 1% of it is electroactive at the level of the cell, very electroactive, and that's why you have drugs called calcium channel blockers. Calcium channel blockers block the calcium channel, and by blocking the calcium channel, they change the electromagnetics of the cell. When a cell loses its vitality, which is what happens when a cell is sick, it loses its ability to handle calcium. And this is what accounts for calcification over time, not too much calcium. And the reason I bring this up is because periodically you hear the lay press say things like, oh, calcium is associated with heart disease, and don't take your calcium supplements, you're taking too much calcium. It's not that you're taking too much calcium, it's that the cells are not healthy enough to handle the calcium. Calcium is stored in the bone. If you have calcium, like a normal amount of calcium, it'll just get stored in the bone, and excess will probably get stored in the bone too. It's not just going to deposit in tissues randomly. That's not how the digestive system works. Calcification, don't blame calcification on your supplements is what I'm saying. Blame it on your sick cells. So
wow. And Anna would like to know what types of collagen you recommend. I've been a huge fan of this new collagen peptide. Yeah. It's made a tremendous difference.
It's amazing, right? There's a couple ways to get collagen. You can get collagen peptides, which is great. Bone broth protein is unbelievably valuable. Bone broth is, chicken soup, homemade chicken soup is great. And then also when you're using collagen, you want to make sure you're getting enough vitamin C. Because the collagen is great, and when you're taking the collagen peptides and the amino acids that help you build collagen. Collagen's a tripeptide, it's got 3 amino acids. So when you take those amino acids, or you take the collagen peptides, or you take collagen, you're getting the raw materials for building collagen, but you can't make the collagen without vitamin C. So I always tell people with the collagen peptides, make sure you're using your Beyond Tangy Tangerine, which is a great source of vitamin C. You always want those two together.
Awesome. And then let me see. We have a question from Suzanne Ricketts, and she just wanted to know any thoughts on how one can have a high copper reading?
What would make you have a high copper reading?
Yes, I think so.
Deficiencies in zinc.
Okay.
So yeah, start supplementing with zinc. Zinc, and remember, they have an antagonistic relationship. So deficiencies in zinc can cause imbalances in copper, and deficiencies in copper can cause imbalances in zinc.
Awesome.
Okay.
And you kind of addressed the test question, but have you seen these new patch things that you're supposed to wear them, and they're going to tell you what minerals you need or what vitamins
They're
you
measuring
need?
the sweat, probably. They're measuring the minerals in sweat. I don't know. Is it a computer chip?
Yeah, it's like a little attachable.
I don't know the technology, but it makes sense because the sweat is a good measurement of the minerals. It's better than the hair. You'll see what's coming out. Yes, more current. You'll see what's coming out. I mean, when the body secretes things, it secretes things like a hologram, holographically. So the same pattern of minerals that are inside your body are going to come out in all your secretions. So you can see the relative amounts of each substance in the sweat, theoretically. That makes sense to me. I can't, I want to see more about it. But first hearing about it makes sense. I can see the logic.
Awesome. Well, that was fascinating, and I can listen to you for hours.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I love, here, check. I'm going to say the last thing. I'll say goodbye. The idea, talking about the relationship between electrolytes and minerals at the electronic level and biology and chemistry is called PChem. Did you take PChem? You took PChem, physical chemistry, right? And in pharmacy school, PChem has got a reputation for being the hardest form of chemistry. PChem. So everything I was talking, and there's a bumper sticker that says "honk if you pass PChem." Everybody put a joke about PChem being the hardest course, right? So everything what we talked about here with minerals, and this is why they're so misunderstood, is PChem. Minerals and elements work at the physics level. They work at the quantum level. They work at the electron level. And we have a chemocentric world. We have a chemocentric society. We have a chemocentric culture that's almost anachronistic in the sense that when we first started learning about organic chemistry, it was in the early 1800s, late 1700s, early 1800s. By the middle 1800s, chemistry was getting going, and drug companies and pesticide companies and fertilizer companies, agriculture companies, they all kind of got together to promote chemistry, better living through chemistry. And chemistry was the way to go. We had all these big factories that are dedicated to chemistry, all these big businesses that are dedicated to chemistry. But something came along at the turn of the 20th century that should have changed everything. And it did kind of change everything, but hasn't caught on yet. And that's quantum. That's electrons, that's protons. So we're in a chemocentric world, but fundamentally the world's not chemical. Fundamentally, the world is quantum. The world is electrical at the fundamental level. Electricity, chemistry only works because of electricity. Chemistry is only as relevant as the electricity. That's why chemistry works. And even the bonds that we talk about are not really, we see them as bonds, right? The chemical bonds, they're not bonds. That's magnetism. That's electromagnetics. That's quantum. And so with all the stuff we talked about today, and it's my passion and my love, it's really to get the idea across that we have to go one step below if we're really going to understand how nutrition works, if we're really going to be able to leverage nutrition, and ultimately if we're really going to leverage our health, is we want to understand how chemistry is a function of electronics. and what we do at the electrical level to support the chemical level. And there's tons of stuff that we can do if we start to understand this fundamental level, the quantum level, PCAM, physical chemistry.
Awesome.
All right.
David asked a question, and you just said, so why are most doctors wrapped up in prescription drugs and not using holistic methods?
You know, they asked me that yesterday. He asked me something similar. So why do doctors prescribe so many medicines? 10 medicines, 12 medicines, 13 medicines. And I hear this question a lot. And in a way, the question reveals something about how we think about medicine, how we think about doctors. Because we implicitly think doctor equals genius. Implicitly. And then when they do something stupid, we're like, how could it do that? Because we doctor equals genius. And I'm not putting doctors, because I have a lot of friends who are doctors. I think they went into the field to help people. They're good people. All of my friends who are doctors, they're really good people. You know, they're well-meaning, but the model is such that it promotes a certain way of thinking. And if you're not an open-minded person, if you're not a free thinker, it's very easy to become conditioned this way. I'm a rogue pharmacist. I shouldn't be thinking this way. In pharmacy school, they taught us, crazy hippies. They made us I had to go to Eli Lilly and get the whole propaganda. I had to go. I didn't want to go, but I had to go to Eli Lilly and to Abbott and to get the whole thing. And so it takes somebody who's a free thinker, somebody who's willing to think outside the box. And that's not everybody, because the paradigm is set in stone. The medical schools pay. You guys know all the story. So we have to get out of doctor equals genius, number one. I'm not putting them down. I'm clear. I don't want anybody to think I'm putting doctors down. There may be some who are geniuses, but it doesn't necessarily equate just because you're a clinician. And then this is very important, and I'm going to go after this, I promise. This is the last thing I'm going to say. Clinical chemistry is not biochemistry. We need to distinguish between the types of chemistry. Clinical chemistry is the chemistry of diagnostics, the chemistry of test scores. What's your cholesterol? What's your blood pressure? What's your blood urea nitrogen, etc. That's clinical chemistry. That's diagnostics. What I'm talking about is biochemistry. And I always say, if you're sick, go to a biochemist, because it's in the pathways. It's in the biochemical pathways. When you're sick,
right,
biochemical pathways are somehow not working like they should. You got to backtrack. You got to go by the symptoms, and you got to look at the biochemistry. And that's why if you're sick and you go to a clinician, you're going to get dosed with medicine. That's how it's going to be. If you're sick and you go to a biochemist, you're probably going to, if he's a good biochemist, he's going to probably look for something nutritional that's working, that's affecting the way the biochemistry of the body is showing up. So the distinction between biochemistry and clinical chemistry that doesn't serve us. And that's it.
So Ben, there's actually a comment here. I'll listen all night if he's willing.
Yes. And so for those of us that are willing to listen all night, because you didn't have a presentation here, please tell us the best way to follow you and continue to learn.
There we go.
There's lots of ways. First of all, my main business is skincare, and that's really my expertise and my love of all loves is skincare. And I've been formulating for many, many years. So go to truthtreatments.com. That's plural, truthtreatments.com. We got some specials up there. Then I have a radio program I do every day called The Bright Side, and there's lots of archives. So go to brightsideben.com. Then I also have criticalhealthnews.com. Then I also do videos every day. I do a moment of truth video for 90 seconds. I just do a random topic like I did today. I did progesterone. Tomorrow I'm going to do crying. I did FODMAPs on Monday. I just do various topics. And so there's tons of archive. You get those on criticalhealthnews.com. And then go to pharmacistben.com. There's tons of, just Google Pharmacist Ben and you'll get a million things. And thank you.
I follow you often on Instagram. So thank you very much.
Are you on my Truth Treatments page?
No, I'm going to have to go find that one.
Yeah, go truth.treatments on Instagram. And then I have a Facebook page, The Bright Side with Pharmacist Ben.
Awesome.
All right, you guys, thank you so much. I'm honored.
Thanks for coming out.
Okay, we'll talk again soon. Bye.
Bye.